Okay, we all good? It's a very dramatic door. Okay, thanks everybody. Today the government has taken the decision to list a second organisation as a prohibited hate group. The first organisation that was listed was Hizb ut-Tahrir. Today, the organisation that would be colloquially known as the neo-Nazis, but has gone through different names, the European Australian Movement, the National Socialist Network, and White Australia, has been listed as the second prohibited hate group under the changes that were made to the criminal code. There is a very strict process for this to happen. The process can only occur when it's initiated by ASIO, and then a ministerial decision has to follow that. The ministerial decision has to be made with the approval of the Attorney-General, and then there also has to be consultation with the opposition, and all of these steps have been met. The threshold for ASIO and the threshold for the minister is slightly different. The threshold for ASIO is that the organisation is engaged in behaviour which would increase the risk of violence, among other things. The ministerial threshold includes the concept as to whether or not the organisation has advocated or engaged in hate crimes. All of the required thresholds have been met, and the government has now completed the work for White Australia to be listed as a prohibited hate group. For background here, some people will remember in November last year, the Director-General of ASIO, Mike Burgess, made clear that there were two organisations which were stretching the boundary of legality. He said that two organisations, which he described at the time as awful but lawful, were going right to the edge of what they thought they could legally get away with in ways that were making Australians less safe, effectively opening the door for the violence to be committed by others. The two organisations that he named were the neo-Nazis and Hizb ut-Tahrir. On the 12th of January of this year, in the wake of the Bondi attack, I stood in the courtyard with the Prime Minister and the Attorney-General and announced that we would lower the threshold in the criminal code to be able to deal with prohibited hate groups, and that legislation went through the Parliament in January. At the time, the neo-Nazis announced that they would be disbanding. Effectively, what they did, for want of a better term, was they phoenixed, changed their name, but didn't change the fact that they were still an organisation and was still engaging in the exact sort of behaviour that met the thresholds for this legislation. On the 22nd of April, I was advised that there was a likelihood, I was advised by ASIO there was a likelihood that the threshold had been met. On the 25th of April, ASIO presented the first piece of advice, and it was later, a couple of weeks later, there was a further update which authorised formally next steps to determine if the ministerial threshold had been met. The opposition was briefed as required, and I thank them for their participation in that. Today, the process has been completed and takes effect at midnight tonight. This means that supporting, funding, training, recruiting, joining or directing this group constitutes a criminal offence with a maximum penalty of 15 years in prison. None of this will stop bigoted people from having horrific ideologies, but it does prevent this group from organising, from meeting, and prevent some of the sorts of horrific bigoted rallies that we've seen around our country. It sends a clear message to people who believe in racial supremacy that their views have no place in modern Australia. We're a country that judges you on who you are, not on where you're from. The neo-Nazis have gone after almost every different group you can imagine, whether people are Jewish, whether they are Muslim, whether people are of Asian heritage, whether they're First Nations. They've engaged in a series of examples of bigotry, all of which fit with their white supremacist ideology. It's been made clear today that under Australian law, they are now a banned organisation.